Nearly 1,200,000 Kazakhs were conscripted to the Soviet Army in World War II. Every fifth Kazakh fought in the war. Nearly 500,000 sons and daughters of the Kazakh land were killed during the war. June 22nd, 1941, Sunday, the day of the summer solstice and the shortest night that made the life of millions of people much shorter. June 22nd, 1941. What a nice day, I thought in the morning. That because yesterday, Uncle Amantai came with his family from the village and we went to the park. At the beginning it was fun and crowded, but then suddenly everyone began to gather in one place. One man read something, but we stood behind and didn't hear well. Everyone began to say, war, war. Interestingly, how war does look like? I thought that I had a machine gun. It was a weekend, Sunday. We were schoolboys and played in Kazakh pie. It wasn't just Kazgan. There was a park of culture and recreation. All young people spent time there. Some of them were swimming, there was a lake nearby. Someone played football there, someone played volleyball. In general, all young people were in this park of culture and recreation.
Часов 5 или 6, уже дело к вечеру. Наш председатель нашего Карсакпайского поселкового совета на всем.
That day at 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening, our chairman, our village council, arrived on his motorcycle screaming, "Guys, the war began."
Минутку, война началась.
We did not know what the war was. What was the meaning of this word? Only some time later we certainly understood what exactly happened. But at that time, when we heard the war, we could imagine only what we saw in the cinema.
Сегодня в 4 часа утра без предъявления каких-либо
Today, at 4 o'clock in the morning, without making any claims to the Soviet Union, without declaring war, German troops attacked our country and attacked our borders in many places.
атаковали наши границы во многих местах.
Almaty residents didn't know anything before 3 p.m. Everyone heard on the radio. It was the only fast way to know the news.
И после этого начались люди собираться стали стихийно у репродукторов. Потом
After that, people started gathering near loudspeakers and other places.
и вот в Алмате
Meetings took place in 3 locations, including the place right here on June 22nd in Almaty.
проходил митинг. Вот на этом месте проходил самый многочисленный митинг,
The
который
most popular meeting took place here. It was organized by Secretary Shayakmetov.
постепенно в 22-23 июня митинги прошли.
One by one, meetings took place all over Kazakhstan on the 22nd, 23rd of June. On Freedom Square, factories, kolkhozes in Kostanay,
колхозах,
on Shimkent lead smelter.
цинковом комбинате.
We stood and listened for a long time. Everyone around talked and talked. It was noisy. I wanted to go home. Then Dad and Uncle Amantai left somewhere. and we returned home. But for some reason it was no longer fun. I felt boring without Dad.
Все пошли в военкомат добровольцами, и остались такие воспоминания.
Everyone went to the military commissariat as volunteers. The staff of the Frunze District Military Commissariat in Almaty remember how the first person came, then the second, the third. The building was full of people who wanted to register. Then the working day was over. 1 a.m., 3 a.m. For 2 days, the Frunze military office made registration for those who wanted to go to the front line. From the first hours and days of the war on the territory of Kazakhstan, the formation of military units and subunits began. By that moment, there were already 187,000 Kazakhstanis who joined the army of the Soviet Union as reservists. In the first minutes of the war, most of our compatriots were on the western border of the Union in the midst of the fighting. I was sitting and waiting for my dad. They returned late. I was delighted, but for some reason my mother was crying and began to hug me. Why? Then she began to collect things and cried all the time. I asked why. He often leaves for work and now he will go to war, as in a movie, after all. But she kept on crying and crying. What was the reason? The Republic took upon itself the provision of all its fighters, and there was not only uniforms, but also full equipment with everything that are necessary, including horse-drawn and automobile transport. Central Asian Military District, which headquarters were located in Tashkent, issued decree about formation of field divisions.
Таким образом, 12 июля штаб САВО издает.
Thus, on July the 12th, the Central Asian Military District Headquarters issued a top-secret order to form several divisions. There were divisions 310, 312, 314 and 316. All of them were rifle divisions, that means infantry divisions. These divisions were formed in Akhtubinsk, Akmolensk, Petropavlovsk, and 316 was formed in Almaty. Here, this place was called the Park of Federations. The building of the officers' house was located here. That was School 19. In the beginning, Panfilov lived in the officers' house and School 19. A day later, he moved from the Aero Club building. And the headquarters of 316th Rifle Division was located there.
Большая часть из созданных в 1941 году находилась, 1/3 находилась на направлении Ленинграда, и в Ленинграде.
Most of them were created in 1941. 1/3 were located on the way to Leningrad, and there were Germans in the Sinyavinsky Heights. And our two divisions, Akhtubinsk and Akmolensk, were located in the Sinyavinsky marshes. 4 divisions were in Moscow since September. Simultaneously with the beginning of war, 300 Aktober citizens filed an application in the military enlistment office with a request to send them to the front. At the same time, military units began to form in Akhtubinsk. 312th Rifle Division. Its commander was Colonel Naumov. He was born in the city of Akhtubinsk and he was requested to form these divisions. During 1 week, the October 312th Division fought stubborn defensive battles against 3 or 4 enemy divisions at Malyaroslavets. After heavy losses, the remaining part joined the 53rd Division, which ended the war near Vienna. 35 people who went to fight from Aktobe region became the heroes of the Soviet Union. One of them is Aliya Moldagulova.
Если мы уже по следующим посмотрим, вот конец 45-го года.
If we have a look at the list of all those who got the award at the end of 1945 by ethnic grounds, the Kazakhs took the 5th place, after Russians, Belarusians, Jews and Tatars. Kazakhs got more than 40,000 awards. This is a very big award.
Это очень большая награда.
Вот с этого вокзала Алматы-2 уходили на фронт в 1940.
From 1941 till the end of the war, volunteers who were mobilized to front line were leaving from railway station Almaty 2.
Также, кстати, как и Алмата-1, потому что на Алмате-1 грузились машины, грузовой транспорт, лошади, конский состав и так далее. То здесь грузились
Cars,
люди.
trucks, horses and so on were loaded on railway station Almaty 1. That's why our 2 stations are included in the list of monuments where a lot of people left to their last journey and they did not return back.
Много людей в последний свой путь и не вернулись сюда назад. Офицеры Павел Кузнецов и Александр Трефилов оставили воспоминания.
Officers Pavel Kuznetsov, Alexander Trifilov left memories about the Panfilov division. Zhambil Jabayuli arrived to see off the division before they went to the front line. He was 95 years old. However, he went around to the soldiers, talked with the soldiers and blessed them. After the emergency formation of the 1st combat units in 1941, special training of all fighters began. Now conscripts had to pass training at military bases. That was the reason why most of the Kazakhstani divisions, brigades and regiments were introduced into the army in 1942, in the period of the most fierce and bloody battles. Dad's been gone for a month. Yesterday, a letter came. Dad writes that he is doing well. He says he will be back soon. He also wrote that I did well helping my mother. I hope that we will go to the park again, since Dad will be back soon. For some reason, Mom is crying again.
На войне все страшно. Хотя
Everything is scary in the war.
говорили, так
Although they say that it is not, and there is heroism and so on.
сказать,
A human is a human. Human nature.
защитить себя, оборониться,
A human wants to protect himself, to defend himself and to be unharmed,
живым.
to stay alive.
Это чувство, конечно,
Those who were in the war understand this feeling well.
кто был на войне. Самые такие моменты были, конечно. Это вот как раз начало наступления через
The
границу.
most difficult moments happened during the crossing of the German border, and the second one was the last battle in Berlin.
На Берлин. Тут они настолько плотно обстреляли наши позиции. И каждый, наверное,
They fired so tightly at our positions, and everyone, including myself, was waiting. That was probably the last step.
немножечко. Я был ранен 17 апреля.
I was wounded April 17th, 1945 near Berlin. A German bullet passed through my body.
Прошила меня насквозь.
5 сентября 1945
Our life after the park has changed.
парка
Dad left and Mom went to work. And now she works a lot.
на работу.
She's often not at home.
Очень много
She's saying we must help the front line.
нет дома.
I didn't understand what to do, but Alibek and Vovka also decided to help. But we have not figured out yet how we can help.
Только еще не придумали как.
The focus of the economy of the Republic was transferred to military needs. Agriculture of Kazakhstan provided food, industry provided the necessary raw materials to the front line. All labor reserves were involved. People at the limit of their capabilities worked in 3 shifts. At the same time, everyone understood that it was his or her duty to contribute to the common cause.
Казахстан представлял достаточно важное стратегическое значение.
Kazakhstan has strategic importance because the whole republic was seen as the rear of the entire Soviet Union. During the war years, military and industrial economic facilities were transferred to Kazakhstan. These were factories, plants and cultural facilities.
Культурные объекты в Казахстан в годы войны было
During the years of war, 1.5 million people were evacuated to Kazakhstan. Most part of them employed at industrial enterprises that were supporting the country's defense.
это изготовление военных.
It was manufacture of military uniform, weapons, food supplies and other things. In 1941-1942, 220 factories, workshops and artels were relocated to the Republic. Most part of it were relocated from Ukraine, Belarus, Moldova, Moscow and Leningrad, including 54 factories and light industry factories.
Еще один важный момент, который нужно здесь упомянуть, помимо мобилизации людских ресурсов, был
Another important point that should be mentioned here, besides mobilizing human resources, there was also the mobilization of military equipment and vehicles.
Советского Союза.
More than 31,000 vehicles and motor vehicles were mobilized on the territory of the Soviet Union only in the first period of the war. There were tractors, cars and others. More than 800,000 horses were mobilized. The Special Society was organized in the Red Army, and almost every division had an artillery regiment.
В дивизии имелся артиллерийский полк. Казахстан вообще
In general, for the entire period, Kazakhstan sent 1 million people to the armed forces of the Soviet Union.
1 200
It means that there were 200,000 people in the Red Army.
то есть
And also there were people in labor armies, labor columns.
ушло порядка
Another 700,000 people left there.
соотношений из
Talking about ratio, the population was 6 million people and 2 million left.
численности.
November the 13th, 1941, the State Defense Committee issued a secret resolution, according to which not only Kazakhstan but also 5 Union republics should begin to form divisions on an ethnic basis. That means that 80% of the military forces should include locals. The reason was the fact that the population of Kazakhstan and the Central Asian republics has been engaged in animal husbandry for centuries. There was a sufficient number of riding, artillery and convoy horses, equipment for them. Men were considered good riders, well-aimed shooters and excellent at weapons. Homeland is in danger. Kazakhstan reinforces its defense. IGSR trainer and Bulakov, director of the Jambul stud farm, with thousands of collective farmers, breed horses for the Red Army.
Итак, в Казахстане приступили к созданию национально-войсковых формирований. Это в
So in Kazakhstan, the creation of national military formations began. It means that Kazakhstan was supposed to prepare 2 rifle brigades and 3 cavalry divisions in the middle of November. Initially, the formation points were at Tubinsk, Akmolensk, Almaty and Jambul. In order to be sure in the quality of combat training, it was important that national combats would be led by Kazakh commanders, Kazakh officers. Here's an example. If you take a look at the 1st Cavalry Divisions, the commanders of the regiments, the squadron commanders, they were Kazakh officers. Their names are Yasain Yashanov, Bidildar Daskanov, Abdullah Akayev. They were the 1st Kazakh officers. We need to mention National Rifle Brigades. There were 100th and 101st Brigades that participated in the defense of Moscow. Famous participants of that divisions were Manshuk Mametova, Ibrahim Suleimanov, who was the sniper and became the hero of the Soviet Union posthumously. Azerkan Nushaikov was also a famous writer and was the participant of the 100th Rifle Brigade. The 100th Rifle Brigade fought very valiantly. Despite the losses, it was constantly expanded. If initially it consisted of Kazakhs by 80%, after the first battles it lost the half of brigade. After that there were no national aspect anymore. It was hard to comply, so that the 100th Brigade carried its battle flag all through the war. December 1941. Dad stopped writing. There were no letters for a whole month. Mom is always tired and sad. And yesterday Oljas went to war. Here's my mother's younger brother. For some reason, I'm always scared. I'm afraid. If suddenly these fascists will come to our house and Dad is not at home. Vovka and Dalibek and I also figured out how to help the front line.
Во время войны из Казахстана на фронт, говорят, отправили около 1 миллиона 200 тысяч душ. Из них половина...
During the war, more than 1,200,000 souls were sent from Kazakhstan. Half of them did not return home. They died or were captured. And answering the question whose war it was the war of the Soviet people against the fascist invaders. And the Soviet people are all those who lived under the banner of the Soviets. Russians, Ukrainians, Belarusians, Kazakhs, Kyrgyz, and so on.
Русские, украинцы, белорус, казах, киргиз и так далее, и подобное, и так далее. Я не видел, чтобы кто-то бил себе в грудь, что победа...
I didn't see any beating themselves in the chest that the Kazakhs won, or the Kyrgyz, or the Uzbeks, others. No, the Soviet people won.
Советский народ.
The year 1941. Kazakhstan, as part of the Soviet Union, entered the World War II. There are 4 years ahead of fierce battles, victories and defeats, the selfless work of the rear workers, the continuation of the evacuation and mobilization of all the resources of the Republic. To know how the country experienced this period, who are the people who gave us a peaceful sky? Watch in the project Our Common Victory. To make everyone know, remember and honor. Mommy, hello. Soon the battle begins. The enemy stays high. I carry the photograph with me, and that means you're in the fight with me, Mom. I can tell you everything, but I still have to fight for a long time in order to get the coveted victory and give life for it. And you must anxiously wait for the end of war to come. No, I will come back with victory, as from that civil war my father came back. During these years, I know those guys grew up who came instead of us. But I believe they will not wear soldiers' overcoats as we do now. Let them learn only a marching step. Peaceful minute will come. finishing the commander calls to attack, and yet it will be our height.